There are people who feel a quiet tightening in their chest whenever they need to say the word no. It's a simple word, just 2 letters, yet for some it feels like a betrayal, a risk, or even a threat. They agree when they are exhausted. They commit when they are overwhelmed. They smile while something inside them is quietly shrinking. If this feels familiar, you're not weak. You're not incapable. You're responding to something deeply wired into your emotional history. The psychology of struggling to say no is rarely about politeness. It's usually about safety. For many people, this pattern begins early. As children, we learn how to maintain connection with caregivers. If love felt conditional, if approval came when you were helpful, agreeable, or low maintenance, your nervous system may have learned that harmony equals survival. Saying no might have led to disappointment, criticism, withdrawal, or subtle emotional distance. Over time, your brain began linking self-sacrifice with belonging. Children are incredibly adaptive. If being easy kept the household calm, you became easy. If being useful earned praise, you became useful. If expressing needs led to tension, you stopped expressing them. The behavior wasn't a flaw. It was intelligence. You were protecting attachment, but what protects you in childhood can quietly imprison you in adulthood. As an adult, this pattern often shows up as chronic overcommitment. You volunteer for tasks you don't have time for. You answer messages immediately, even when you need rest. You agree to social plans when your body's begging for solitude. And afterward, you feel resentment, not necessarily toward the other person, but toward yourself. You wonder why you couldn't just speak up. Underneath that frustration is usually fear. Fear of being disliked, fear of conflict, fear of being perceived as selfish, fear of disappointing someone and losing their approval. The nervous system doesn't distinguish between emotional rejection and physical danger as clearly as we might think. Social exclusion has historically meant vulnerability. So when you imagine saying no, your body may react with anxiety, racing heart, shallow breath, tight throat. This isn't dramatic, it's biology. Your brain is trying to protect you from what it interprets as relational risk. There is also an identity component. Many people who struggle to say no build their self-worth around being dependable, generous, or selfless. You may be the reliable one in your family, the supportive friend, the team player. These identities feel good. They provide validation. But when your value becomes tied to constant availability, boundaries start to feel like a threat to who you are. So you give, and give, and give. And over time, something subtle begins to erode. You might notice emotional fatigue. You feel drained but can't explain why. You start avoiding messages because you're overwhelmed. You fantasize about disappearing for a while, just to breathe. You might even feel bursts of irritability that surprise you. This is often unexpressed anger, the anger of a self that hasn't been heard. Resentment is one of the clearest signals that a boundary is needed. But if you were taught that anger is unacceptable, you may suppress it. Instead of saying, "I can't do this," you say, "It's fine," while your body absorbs the cost. There's also a cognitive distortion at play. Many people who struggle to say no overestimate the negative consequences of refusal. They imagine catastrophic reactions. They'll think I'm selfish. They'll stop inviting me. I'll ruin the relationship. In reality, most healthy relationships can tolerate a boundary. But if your early experiences included volatility or guilt when you asserted yourself, your mind may assume the worst-case scenario. This creates a loop. You say yes to avoid discomfort. The other person is pleased. You feel temporary relief. But later, you feel burdened. That burden increases your stress. And the next time someone asks, you feel even more pressure because you've already established a pattern of compliance. Over time, your yes stops being generous and starts being automatic. And here's something important. People pleasing is often mistaken for kindness. But true kindness includes yourself. When you say yes while internally saying no, you create emotional incongruence. Others interact with the version of you that agrees. They don't see the internal strain. This can lead to relationships where your needs remain invisible, not because others don't care, but because you haven't allowed them to see those needs. Struggling to say no also affects self-trust. Each time you override your limits, you teach yourself that your feelings are negotiable. You start doubting your right to rest, to decline, to choose differently. Over time, this erodes confidence, not because you're incapable, but because you've stopped honoring your internal signals. The irony is that many people who fear rejection end up feeling unseen. When you constantly adapt to others, you reduce the opportunity for authentic connection. Intimacy requires truth, and truth includes limits. There are also deeper emotional drivers that vary from person to person. For some, it's abandonment anxiety. If you grew up with inconsistent affection, you may feel compelled to maintain closeness at all costs. For others, it's hyper-responsibility. Perhaps you were parentified, taking on adult roles too early. You learned that your job was to hold things together. Saying no now feels like dropping the ball. And sometimes it's simply unfamiliarity. If you were never modeled healthy boundaries, you may not even know what they look like. You might believe boundaries are harsh or cold. In reality, boundaries are clarity. They are the structure that keeps relationships sustainable. When you begin to practice saying no, it may feel unnatural at first. Your body might react. You might over-explain. You might apologize excessively. This is normal. You're rewiring a pattern that has likely been reinforced for years. The key shift is understanding that discomfort does not mean danger. The anxiety you feel when setting a boundary is often the echo of an old survival strategy, not evidence that you're doing something wrong. Start small. Notice the micro moments. When someone asks for your time, pause. Instead of answering immediately, give yourself space. Let me think about that. This simple delay interrupts the automatic yes. It gives your nervous system time to settle and your authentic response time to surface. Pay attention to your body. Tightness, fatigue, irritation. These are data. They are not inconveniences to suppress. They are information guiding you toward balance. It's also helpful to reframe what no means. It is not rejection of a person. It is protection of capacity. When you say no to something misaligned, you are saying yes to your energy, your priorities, your mental health. And here's something empowering. Healthy people respect boundaries. If someone reacts poorly to a reasonable no, that reaction tells you something valuable about the relationship dynamic. It may reveal where you've been overfunctioning. It may show you who benefits from your lack of limits. Growth often involves tolerating the temporary discomfort of change for the long-term reward of authenticity. As you practice, you may notice something surprising. The world doesn't collapse. Some people may adjust. Some may even admire your clarity. And internally, you may begin to feel steadier, lighter, more aligned. There is a quiet confidence that develops when your words match your internal truth. Self-respect strengthens self-worth in a way external approval never can. But this isn't about becoming rigid or unkind. It's about balance. Generosity is beautiful when it flows from choice rather than fear. Helping others is meaningful when it doesn't cost you your well-being. If you struggle to say no, approach yourself with compassion. This pattern likely formed when you were doing your best to survive emotionally. It kept you connected. It protected you from conflict. It helped you belong. Now you are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to disappoint someone occasionally and still be worthy. You are allowed to prioritize rest. You are allowed to have limits without explaining your entire history to justify them. Healing in this area is not about becoming someone else. It's about integrating the parts of you that learn to stay quiet. It's about building a nervous system that understands that boundaries are not abandonment. And with practice, saying no stops feeling like a threat. It starts feeling like alignment. You begin to trust that the right relationships will survive your honesty. You learn that respect grows where clarity exists. And most importantly, you rediscover the version of yourself that doesn't need to earn love through exhaustion. If you recognize yourself in this pattern, let this be the beginning of a gentler approach. Notice where you override yourself. Experiment with small boundaries. Celebrate each moment of honesty. Progress may feel slow, but every aligned choice rebuilds your relationship with yourself. You don't have to become hardened to become whole. You simply have to believe that your needs matter as much as anyone else's, and they do.